And of course, also we have a very interesting editorial cartoon just to capture this by Gado today. Finally, IEBC servers are open and we can see Chiloba and Chebukati. Allow me to introduce our panelists who are here this morning with us to take us through this and a raft of other issues as well. We have with us Dr. Otiende Amollo, who is a member of parliament from Rarieda. We do have with us also the deputy leader of Ford Kenya. This is Dr. Boni Khalwale. We do have with us also former senator of Nyeri. This is Mutahi Kagwe. We have also the senator of Makueni, Mutula Kilonzo Jr., and also we do have the senator of Elgeyo-Marakwet. This is Kipchumba Murkomen. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
All right, fantastic. We have a very interesting editorial cartoon looking at what we shall be discussing this morning. As far as IEBC is concerned, yes, he's been sent home again, and this is the seventh time that we can see Chairman Chebukati trying to send Chiloba away from IEBC. Let's just start from there with Dr. Otiende Amollo. Looking at this editorial cartoon, you're the people who have always been pushing the envelope for the server to be opened. What do you say about this editorial cartoon today?
I think it's most interesting. Let me start by saying good morning, Kenya. And let me say, in terms of what's happening at IEBC, I think the chickens are coming home to roost.
Yes.
It has always been our view, well supported and well documented, that the IEBC has been improperly constituted and has acted improperly. And it is my view that the solution will need to go deeper than just dealing with the chief executive. I think that there are three issues that it raises. The first issue is the rationale. I have no doubt, based on a lot of things we know of the August elections, that the CEO and a raft of other officers within IEBC improperly conducted themselves. And so I have no doubt that if it's in terms of rationale, there would be rationale. What I'm not satisfied with so far is that that rationale does not appear to come out so far on this action. But secondly, while there might be rationale, and I'm sure there is, the process must also be fair.
Yes.
So I think that the chairman and the rest of the commissioners must focus not just on the rationale, but on the fairness of the process. And I think a process like that might require that you don't just act with minimal number of commissioners. It might require that you have more, basically a full house. But thirdly, I think what we've been seeing with the IEBC, and we saw it last year, is a divided house. When commissioners are divided on issues other than, fidelity to the Constitution, yes, then they all deserve to leave. We have seen decisions that have been taken that appear not to be founded on the Constitution, but appear to be founded on favoritism. You remember that last year, when Chiloba was actually sent on leave, a lot of the other commissioners then ganged up, and I think working with people outside the commission ensured that he came back and ensured that those who ought to have been suspended were not suspended. So for me, my take is that this is just the beginning. But we will have to look at this entire edifice of electoral justice and re-examine all the issues, including the tenure and suitability of the CEO, the tenure and suitability of a host of those employees, and the tenure and suitability of the commissioners themselves.
All right. Of course, also looking at that particular editorial cartoon, we can see the whole issue of the servers. You as the opposition also are pushing the envelope for the servers to be opened. And yes, we saw from IEBC itself that there was a contempt of court. That has not been obeyed up to now. So did that just taper off and went down the tubes, or what is happening?
Well, and we have said this on this show, that the servers were never opened. They have never been opened up to now. You remember our colleague who's not here today, Senator Cheriot, promising that he was going to bring to us at the next show, the results from those servers. And he never did, because they were never opened. Those servers will never be opened.
Maybe he's privy to that information.
Those servers will never be opened, because the answer would be quite obvious, that Raila won the elections and nobody wants to go there. So I think we're in a situation where there's always the stories around those servers, but we'll never get we'll only get to comical and farcical openings like now we are seeing in the editorial cartoon.
All right. Seventh time that Chairman Wafula Chebukati is trying to oust the CEO, Chiloba. Mr. Kagwe, you think then there's a big problem at the IEBC as far as the commission is concerned?
Well, it raises a number of issues. I think the first one is when you have been trying to get rid of somebody 7 times, you know, it begs the question that are you so desperate to get rid of somebody that then you're looking for anything to get rid of them, or is it the other way around? Because to me, a number of issues arise. The first one is that it is very clear that there is a personality clash. It cannot be otherwise. It is very obvious to me. The second thing has to do with the fact that we are dealing with audit issues. Now, when you have got an audit query, the normal procedure in an audit query is that the issues of the audit must be discussed openly.
Yes.
So that we know that this is the matter that is in question. There is a procurement issue, that there is a procurement question. What is the procurement question? I hear there are also issues regarding the payment of lawyers. Which lawyers were paid? How much were they paid? Under what circumstances are they deemed to have been overpaid or underpaid? In other words, the technical aspects of the audit need to be clarified before we can then start saying that so-and-so is the one who made the mistake. The third one has to do with what my brother here said, and that's the procedure. You know, what is the procedure of removing Chiloba, if indeed that is what should happen? What is the procedure? Because finally, there is the issue of management. How do you manage the IEBC itself? Morale is low among the members of staff. Who is at fault? What should be done? And therefore, even as we discuss this matter, I think the first thing for us to do is to say, we don't even have, right now, we don't even have enough information, particularly to do with the audit. We don't have enough information to make informed, you know, contribution and informed decisions. But suffice it to say that when a chairman and a CEO are trying to get rid of each other, or one is trying to get rid of the other 7 times, there are big questions to be answered.
Mm-hmm. Big questions to be answered. Mutula, Kilonzo?
This problem started a long time ago. And fortunately, in this panel, there are 3 members who sat in the Joint Select Committee, the Majority Leader and Senator Khalwale. And one of the things we identified at yourself. And myself, sorry. It can't be Debarl. We identified a problem in the Secretariat because Kenyans brought issues about the Secretariat, beginning with Chiloba and others. And the first point was we made a recommendation that the new commissioners should deal with the Secretariat in terms of disciplinary action and matters concerning the Secretariat. Because in the previous commission, this was also a query. Now, alongside that, we proposed an amendment to the Secretariat, to the law on the IEBC Act, so that you could have what would be a clear separation of the jurisdictions between the Secretariat and the commissioners. That did not happen. And therefore, the problems that you find, the commission finds itself, is something that they chose.
All right, I can see your microphone has just dropped. Just lift it high, and then you...
The microphone has decided not to board.
It should board shortly. Let me come and help you quickly. But you can continue still. We can hear you.
Just be talking.
Right?
You can't chew gum and walk at the same
Yeah,
time.
that's what you...
You cannot multitask.
He was famous for that.
All right.
Now, the commission was supposed to deal with those fundamental issues. It is obvious that there's a problem with the structure of IEBC as composed. So our amendments to the law did not solve the problems because what my good friend Senator Mutahi Kagwe is saying, there appears to be a personality clash, which is also a structure issue between the CEO and the chairman. Number 3, the question of the conduct of Chiloba should not be addressed as casually as Chebukati appears to be handling it. Most of us think that Chiloba should have gone a long time ago. But ideally, for purposes of Kenyans who have asked several questions, they should have prepared. And Chebukati, the chairman, is a qualified judge. Should know that he should draw a detailed charge sheet. If the memo that he issued before the repeat elections is anything to go by, those would have been the charges that Chiloba ideally ought to have been suspended on, so that the 90 days, for purposes of Kenyans, would be the days where Chiloba would come and answer the questions regarding the 10 issues or 12 or 13. Now it appears as if they're just settling scores as opposed to addressing the issue, or what worse, between Chiloba, Chebukati, Welie and others, they are attempting to cover up what appears to have been fraud happening at IEBC. We are not surprised. And let me tell you, when the chickens finally come home to roost, and we discovered recently in our meeting with the IEBC that even the equipment that we purchased,
yes,
the integrated electronic management system, cannot register voters as we speak because they did not purchase the software. All these audit queries, the KPMG audit, the one that was done on the register, again, was before the Legal Affairs Committee of the Senate. It was discovered that they warned them that there will be a problem with the security and integrity of the servers. Lastly, to say that it will come to pass that Chebukati was an impediment on the opening of the servers because those officers were available in Kenya during the presidential election. So what am I asking? The trial of Chiloba should be done publicly, so that it does not appear as if all of them are trying to wash themselves clean by making other people dirty. So if Chiloba has committed an error, that error should be properly documented, a memo, an issue, so that we do not go back to the same mistakes. I said yesterday that it will be Oswago. We didn't address Oswago's issues. Now it is Chiloba. We haven't addressed it. We were just going to fire him. Next is going to be Mwikali, Nyokabi, Kamau, and it's still going to be the same issue. So we have a fundamental problem at IEBC in terms of the secretariat and the structure. And therefore, the solution is not this thing of issuing a press conference and having an agenda that doesn't make sense and not having a charge sheet that is proper on Chiloba. Let him be tried properly, because my view is that the Supreme Court obviously decided to bury itself in the sand by suggesting that there's nobody to blame. Who are we supposed to blame? The devil?
So there's actually a good need to have a reform, an electoral reform, starting with the IEBC as it is right now. We can see this Mark and Maya.
The structure.
Right. Let's hear from Murkomen.
First of all, thank you for having me. Good morning, Kenya. Let me, contextualize what's happening in IEBC in 4 ways. One is that we have a structural problem, as Senator Mutula is saying, and that structural problem is constitutional. There are two centers of power in IEBC. As Mutula said, we were 3 of us in the committee that dealt with the reform of elections, and there was nothing we would have done in terms of doing away with the secretariat, or the secretary being a chair of the secretariat and the chair being a chair of the commissioners. So there are two centers of power, and really that is where the whole problem comes from. The decision making in IEBC cannot be made by the commissioners without the support of the secretariat, and secretariat alone cannot do it without support of the commissioners. The right thing to do is, when we amend the constitution, and I hope we do, is to create only one center, like in Ghana, where the chair of the commission is also the CEO, so that it takes responsibility, and maybe have only 3 commissioners, so that then you have 3 commissioners, CEO is the chair, and the secretariat is answerable to the CEO, who is the chair. There will be no 2 centers of power. Now, even when you talk about 2 centers of power, the discussion taking place in IEBC, I don't think has anything to do with last elections. It's actually competition of interest within the commission. And I believe that the commissioners, and I've heard from the streets that from last year, the commissioners have been competing to control human resource and tenders. And that the main reason why Chiloba now is in this problem is because of tenderpreneurship. Now, commissioners go there, and that's where I'm telling you, two centers of power. They go there and promise their people that now I'm a commissioner, I'll be able to hire some people for you in the commission. Number two, I'll be able to give you certain business. In fact, some of the commissioners were heard saying that, you know, time is moving very fast, we've not made money here. There is even questions as to how did the chairman of IEBC, who is the chair of the legal committee in the subcommittee of the commission, start giving tenders to his own law firm and to his own friends and procedurally without being approved by the commission. So the fight there, I can tell you for sure, has nothing to do with who will be elected and who was supposed to be elected. It has everything to do with who wants to make money through what process. And it will be unfortunate if it will be confirmed that the competition for tenders is the main reason, then a proper inquiry must be done in the commission. And let me go back to the to the committee that we were formed of Parliament, Joint Committee of both houses. We made a very rash decision, and it was temporary in the law that says commissioners go and be procured by religious organizations. Now we created a mess where we left all that process to religious leaders. They went and picked the kind of commissioners we have at the moment. And it was 1 year to the elections. We had to do something, but the problem is that we were doing it at a very short period of time. I think now those people who are procured to serve for that short period, their time has come. And a proper process of getting independent, strong commissioners to come to the office is necessary. Number two, amending the constitution itself to create one center of power is necessary. Last is that when you think about the audit, you cannot, if auditing is for purpose of getting the truth, you cannot remove the CEO and then carry on an audit. The Auditor General has accused the Commission, like it has accused parastatals, has accused ministries, has accused county governments. You cannot say they chase the governor, then someone else will come and answer the audit queries. It means perhaps that if these audit queries were going to be answered in the presence of the accounting officer, who is the CEO at the moment, maybe it will unearth particular decisions that were wrongly done by the commissioners. And so someone wants to chase him out so that when audit queries are being done, then you can have an escape to say, it was the commissioner, it was the CEO, it was... Why can't Chiloba, if there are audit issues, go through the whole process with the Auditor General, with the internal auditor, and with Parliament, so that then, like Mutula is saying, in public glare, we know where there's backstop. But to try to hide these issues and chase one person outside there so that then you can't be able to cover up is dangerous. And I want to insist here, and I don't talk in vain, I want to insist here that the end of the commissioners of IEBC has begun. Actually, it's the beginning of the end.
Beginning of the end, and so this will be the second attempt actually to oust this whole lot of commissioners. The first one was pushed by ODM. Now it is, again, we're looking at the end of it. But I want to ask you a very simple question. 7 times they've attempted actually to oust Chiloba. Do you think then this is all predicated on human capital and also tenders as well?
That's what I'm saying. There are people in the court. Let me tell you, it is anybody who has been in politics will tell you that the pressure that you get from constituents or people of interest, people who pushed for your appointment or whatever, is very high. And what's happening to the commissioners, once they get in, they realize that they are just commissioners. They have no control of staff, they have no control of tenders. Now, I have heard, and I don't want to say heard from which sources, but I heard even as early as last year in the streets that some of the commissioners were saying, you know, this CEO is too hard on us. You know, we have to sit down and share these things to see who goes with what. And it is a culture that has become really entrenched in Kenyan system. If that is the truth, we want an open discussion, an open inquiry as to what exactly is going on within IEBC. And if that is the behavior, then it affects, of course, the integrity of the commission. What I only hope is that in future, when we reconstitute the IEBC or we make the changes we'll make in IEBC, we'll do it as early as this, so that we don't have a situation where 7 months, 8 months to the elections, we have to put up with people that we don't necessarily like them. I mean, look at Chebukati, and I've said this before, and I have nothing to hide. Even before last elections, I say that Chebukati must be a person who makes a decision. He's like a pendulum. He swings in the morning this way, in the evening this other side. We cannot have such a person in running an institution like the IEBC, a person who, when he gets challenges, he go and hides in his house, so that the media were following and wondering, where has Chebukati gone at the most critical moment of decision making? We need one center of power, but a decisive center of power that can make decisions, and if the decisions are wrong, can be held into account.
Right. So it seems it's not really the Secretariat and the Commission. Even the Commission itself are not really looking, of course, on one page as far as Kony and the chair is concerned as well, especially with this saga about Chiloba right now. Let's hear from Dr. Boni Khalwale.
I think I want to agree with my colleagues who have spoken ahead of me. But there's one area they have not emphasized, and it is extremely important, and that is the issue of integrity. Poor Kenyans, you have very good institutions, and your expectations are that the people you put into those institutions to run them, they are going to use them to improve the lives of Kenyans. Unfortunately, poor Kenyans, once those people are in those offices, they use those offices to enjoy themselves. So there are two limbs on this issue of integrity. The first one is to superintend over the general election. Requires tons upon tons of integrity. And the second one is to superintend over the multi-billion shilling tenders. I remember very well at a funeral in Serem in September 2017, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi stood up and raised, just before the repeat presidential election, raised the fact that the IEBC Technical Tender Committee had recommended that for the supply of technology to run the fresh presidential election, that committee, the Technical Tender Committee, had recommended 800 million. However, when Oti Mofo was then given that contract, and who did it? A man called Chiloba. He gave them at a fee of 2.4 billion. So we pushed the agenda a little bit, but because of the excitement of the repeat election, the Jubilee side was not listening, and our side was also having its own problems, and the thing went under. In fact, when I have woken up into this headline, I only saw that particular contract of 2.4 billion that rose from 800 million. I'm hoping that Chiloba will be tried for this particular tender. And if Kenyans don't press for it, then you must be prepared to face the same fate like what happened to Oswago. Oswago and Ali Kibwana, you remember Halima? Yes. Ali Kibwana and Trevi Oyombra. Yeah. These three characters have actually been taken to court on a matter that has already been concluded in the UK, namely the Chicken Gate. People are serving term, but these three characters are still free. So even Chiloba, the same will happen to him, and Kenyans will not see the importance of putting people in office, people of integrity. I want to conclude, because I started by saying that Kenyans are very unlucky, by telling Kenyans that unless we learn from what is happening from successful democracies, first world countries, we will not make it. One of our peers in 1963 was South Korea. South Korea, last week, the High Court or the Supreme Court, whatever it is, jailed their former president for 24 years because of corruption. So we need in Kenya to see a situation whereby Oswago, Chiloba, are jailed for a similar period of years, if not more, so that the guys who will take over them can realize that there is accountability once you go into office. Back to you, members of parliament. You are the ones who are supposed to drive that particular agenda for us.
All right. And I'm holding court this morning with Dr. Boni Khalwale, who is a former Senator of Kakamega and also the Deputy Chair of Ford Kenya. We also have Dr. Otiende Amollo, who is a Member of Parliament from Rarieda. We also have Senator Mutahi Kagwe, the former Senator of Nyeri. Also, we do have Mutula Kilonzo Jr., the Senator of Makueni, and Senator Murkomen Kipchumba, who is a Senator of Elgeyo-Marakwet. Of course, we know that what Matangi today is missing is away in Belgium, and we'll be back next week. We continue apace with the conversation on IEBC. We were on you, Boni Khalwale, unless I
had just passed the baton over to members of parliament.
Yes, members of parliament. So back to you.
I'm very eager to hear from Otiende Amollo, especially.
Let me pick it from there. One issue that Dr. Khalwale raises, and two that Senator Murkomen raises, which I don't agree with, but generally I agree with everything else. First of all, I think, Dr. Khalwale, it is not right to tell Kenyans that all those who are ever appointed are appointed to go there and they look at only their affairs and then they don't care about Kenyans. There are a few people who actually try to do a good, honest job. Well, I will not judge myself, but I can tell you that I was ombudsman for 5 years. I never, ever came into the issues of tenders. I never, ever came into a situation where, as commissioners, we would disagree publicly. You would have been removed. I would never, ever came into a situation where we were at loggerheads with the CEO. And that brings me to the first matter that I want to say. Senator Murkomen, I am happy. First, I am happy because you have come round to what we were saying last year. Only you have now come round because the election results have been declared. Because Senator Murkomen admits that he had these matters on the streets as early as last year. At that time, we were of the view. From you. I was not on the streets. At that time, we were of the view that the IEBC, even the new commissioners and the secretariat, they were ill-constituted to conduct a proper election. And it didn't matter that they had only been brought in. And we thought then that we needed to just forget about our positions and remedy that situation. Now, you are now coming to where we have been all along. And perhaps had you come sooner, we'd have saved the country even the issues of a second round of elections and the cost and all that. But secondly, the problem at IEBC is not constitutional. Let us be fair. It might be structural, it might be legislative, but it is not constitutional. The Constitution is very clear on all these commissions. And specifically at IEBC, if you look at Article 88, you look at Article 250, especially 250 sub-Article 12, the design of all these commissions, before the 2010 commission, we had a situation where the CEO was quite powerful as the chief electoral officer and could make very fundamental decisions. But IEBC being one of the commissions listed, the power to appoint and therefore sack the CEO lies with the commission itself. The chief executive, the person who holds the power of the IEBC is the commission chair. And in truth, the commission chair can hire, can fire, can suspend any CEO at any time, provided it's a collective commission decision. So it's not based on the Constitution. I think the problem we have is that you have a CEO first, who was appointed before these commissioners came in. You have a CEO secondly, who has what we would call extrajuridical powers. He draws support and power from elsewhere. I've just heard you say that the CEO defied the suspension and reported to work. Now that would be very surprising, but it would demonstrate the problem that there is. Ultimately, and I agree with my colleagues, the problem at IEBC cannot be casually treated by suspending the CEO or sacking the CEO without going into the depth. Right now, we have 4 things that are going on. There's the so-called internal audit by IEBC itself. We have the inquiries by Parliament, both by Senate and the National Assembly. We have the issues that the Auditor General has raised, which are alive. And of course, you still have a lot of the unresolved issues that were raised in the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court decided it didn't have jurisdiction to go into them. Now, all those are things that we must go deep into. Some of them, the buck will stop at the door of the CEO. But some of them, it will get to the commissioners, because there are somewhere the CEO says it was the decision of the commission. And so we must deal with this quite systematically. I think that even the fact that the commission, and this is my third point, that the commissioners are divided in such a way that some people make hurried decisions, some walk out, that shows they are unfit to hold office. If you look at Article 10, you look at Article 74, 75, and 76, if one truly is holding office for the benefit of the people as a public trust, then you can't walk away, you can't condemn, you must give people the opportunity to be heard, and it must be systematic. In my view, the inquiry at IEBC must be systematic, and it must be a multi-agency inquiry. And when it is properly done, then it will not just be the CEO to take the full blame. It will be much more than that, in my view.
All right, let's say from Mutahi, then we'll come to Mutula.
I think that, I really think that we have kind of concluded this issue. However, let's go back a little bit on this matter and realize one thing. It has been the same thing for a long time. There was the Oswago debacle that happened a while back. After that one, we were so unhappy with that particular commission. Then we went and got hold of the Hassans of this world. From the Hassans of this world, we went to the Chilobas of this world. Even if we remove Chiloba today and do nothing about the structure and management system that we have got in place, whoever comes next will suffer exactly the same fate. I think what we should be asking ourselves is, what is the issue in terms of the structure and management of IEBC? So that we can address the matter before putting the individuals who are going to man those offices. Because clearly, there is a structural question.
But we have Boni Khalwale thinking differently. That is not really the structural problems. The problem of integrity is the main issue. Even if you have structures and you have flawed people who have flawed characters within that particular organization still, it will not really change anything.
Obviously, the question of integrity is paramount in the whole matter. But let us not forget and let us not imagine that we are going to get some people from Mass who are going to go to the IEBC. They will be Kenyans. Right? We have got Kenyans who can be able to get the job done. But irrespective of the Kenyans you get and how upright standing those Kenyans are, you still need to get the management structure correct.
All right, let's say from Mutula Kilonzo.
Mutahi, you are taking away something which is so fundamental and so critical. You remember once upon a time, you were our minister. And at that time, I was your chairman of public accounts.
Correct.
We found you to be a performer. When Amollo Otiende was in office as the ombudsman, he was a performer. So we have Kenyans who can actually go to office
and
perform. We are obsessed due to political considerations and ethnic considerations. Of course. We want those people from those particular backgrounds to be the ones in the office. I can imagine, for example, Mutahi Kagwe, if you were the governor of Nyeri, we would not find you stealing billions of shillings because you never stole when you were minister at information.
And I'm not a thief.
I'm looking to the time when Amollo Otiende will be the governor for Siaya. He will not do what I'm seeing happening in Siaya. These things, Kenyans are there, but we don't give them an opportunity. Look at who is the typical Kenyan today in office. You are either a celebrity or somebody who has assembled wealth from sources unknown, and you get into office. I mean, young professionals like Kipchumba Murkomen here, you are lucky to have made it from your background. Otherwise, you need thieves.
Let's hear from Mutula.
Can I say something about...
We'll come to you. Let's hear from Mutula. We'll come to you.
There's a fundamental issue that Senator Boni Khalwale raises, but we have also not addressed it.
Yeah.
There's the politics of IEBC. The commissioners were playing politics. And that is the reason why Senator Majority Leader here pushed very drastic and illegal amendments that were to the law to remove the qualifications of chair.
Did you mean Kipchumba?
This one. This one here. To remove the qualifications of chair, to make the vice chair chair, because at that material time, the vice chair was pushing a political agenda, and they didn't want Chebukati. Chebukati is weak, we must admit. The people who, and the only person who bothered to disagree was Mheshimiwa Memusi from Kajiado, that we chose the wrong person. When we had 1, 2, 3 people on merit, we went to the
last one.
He was the last one. We picked the last one because we wanted to satisfy the Western Alliance tribal mathematics, you know? So Chebukati is a nominee for purposes of satisfying the lawyers that they have a representative, but not for purposes that he is qualified. Therefore, the question that, and the only one who would raise this issue with, you know, without blinking is Senator Boni Khalwale, because he's from the Luya nation, but he says it nicely. There is no integrity. Simple. And therefore, Chebukati cannot be allowed to then sacrifice Chiloba so that he looks clean. He is as dirty as him. So if we're going to deal with Chiloba, like they have opened their heads here, we must deal with Chebukati.
I think the best statement I can borrow is from my colleague Senator Wetangula, that from today henceforth, or from last this suspension henceforth, it will be messy and noisy, and it will have casualties. The reason being that.
Never mind that there were none.
You know, the important thing to point out here is that I agree with those who are saying that we need to get to the bottom of the issue. We need to now start IEBC. I think that was a stopgap measure. We even put in the law that point that the appointment of the commissioners through this method of religious leaders was only going to affect these commissioners. Such that even now, if we were to fill the position of Commissioner Akombe who left, we would have to now revert back to old system or amend the law to get a proper system of appointing commissioners. But I disagree with those who are saying that the problem is not, you know, you cannot say they are not, it's not structural. It is structural but not constitutional. If you say it's structural, then that structure is provided for in the Constitution, which is Article 88 and Article 250(12) of the Constitution, that says the Commission will appoint a CEO who will then become the Chief Executive Officer of the Commission and will be in charge of all the Secretariat. The reason why some of the commissions, like in Canada, in Ghana, in Australia, are succeeding is because their commission chair is the CEO, the commission itself at the top is lean, and then, you know, decision making becomes easy, and then people can take responsibility. Now you have 7 people, and I am persuaded Mutula, Kilonzo Jr. and Khalwale had proposed 5 at Windsor, and we had proposed 9. We had wanted to retain 9, but we came to a compromise of 7. Because we said 9 plus 5 divided by 2, then we came to 7. You know, some of these calculations, you just have a compromise. But I am persuaded that we can go to the minimum that the Constitution provides, which is 3. That is what was the case in Ombudsman, and that's the case in many commissions. We can have 3, but let's make the chair the CEO so that there is only one center of power, and we can be able to hold on to one person accountable. We can't have this debate that we're having here. Last, let me say that I agree with those who talk about integrity, the personal integrity of the persons who are holding office. But also I agree with those who say that serving in certain institutions in Kenya is not easy. Because you are damned if you do, you are damned if you don't. I'm glad today the discussion we are having is not about who won the elections and who lost and whether the commission cost it or not. We're now discussing only financial management and accountability related issues. But IEBC itself, to attract the people who are willing to sacrifice their professional I mean, no one has ever gone to IEBC in so many years in this country and get out, you know, comfortably saying that I have retired peacefully, because at any given time, the country is divided into those who won and those who lost. And the institutions that many people don't want to work in is IEBC, NSSF, and EACC. And because of the heat that is there and the suffering that people go through thereafter. So we must also find a way of shielding honest public officers from the attacks that make them find certain officers unpalatable to hold.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Right, of course, also we want to draw your attention to last week's Star. And of course, this has been a developing story about Luo unity at last. Ford Kenya and ASC emerged.
I beg to ask Kipchumba a question.
You beg to ask? Okay.
Yes. Kipchumba, you are so passionate about the need for accountability on Chiloba. What happened with, this, with that voice that you're having now when it came to accountability of the CEO of Kenyatta National Hospital? You Kalenjin MPs were up in arms. You didn't want anybody to touch her. Or is it that you think it is only right when it doesn't affect a professional from your tribe?
I think, that's it's a good and fair question. I have had to go through those questions all the time. You remember in the Senate when I said the security managers must be accountable to Kenyans when we had the worst time, and Kimayo was removed from office. You remember what befell me thereafter. And of course, he brought himself to even a situation where he tried to compete with me. And the only campaign agenda he had was that Murkomen criticized the security management in the country when I was at the top. He should have sided with me. In the issue of KNH, you remember my position was that members of parliament were in a hurry to remove the cabinet secretary without really, I mean, going through the process of determining whether her decision was wrong or right. And my colleagues, most of them, argued that the KNH CEO removal should be done procedurally, where the minister should have worked with the board, so that the board are the ones who are telling the CEO to step aside, because people, in fact, the minister admitted later that it was not her decision, it was the board decision, she just announced. So the question was about whether she was in a situation of exceeding her powers, abuse of powers. But the situation was so small that it didn't warrant removal of a cabinet secretary. So the point I'm trying to say is that you will never find anywhere in my history a situation where I've defended anybody blatantly without really regard of the law, and you can't point at a single public officer where I defended them because they're Kalenjins. I have always just insisted that the law must be followed. And Cicely Kariuki is not a Kalenjin. I was just saying that as a cabinet secretary, if all cabinet secretary was to be removed for such decisions, then there would be nobody who would hold the position of cabinet secretary.
And to be fair, to my brother Kipchumba, the issue of our seat mentality, this whole thing about our seat, is across the board. Even a thief today, you will have a press conference from any particular ethnic community in this country defending their person. You know, people will say, this is our person. We are being beaten. Tunaonewa. When one thief is actually the one in the docket. So this issue of our person is not a Murkomen. In fact, to be honest, I've never had Murkomen defend somebody in that respect. But it is something that we must fight against.
Exactly.
As upright standing Kenyans, we must fight against it and let individuals handle themselves. Because, you know, Boni, if Boni was in office today, because I know that he would conduct that office with integrity, being the people's fighter, not just the bullfighter.
Mtetezi.
Yeah, mtetezi wa watu. Because I know you'd conduct that office with integrity. If he were to commit a crime, then I would imagine that he'd want to stand, you know, himself as Boni Khalwale, not as a lawyer. You know, the lawyers have committed no crime, and those defending the person have got nothing to gain. So I think we must get to the point where we let the law handle individuals without us trying to defend our man, our woman, because they come from our ethnic community, irrespective of whether we think they are guilty or not.
Thank you.
In fact, to be also fair to Kipchumba, when the members of parliament signed the petition, he's one of the people who spoke publicly against it. the action taken by members of parliament was excessive to the extent that most of them were driving what would be, Senator Khalwale was talking about, a tribal agenda. Insofar as KNH issue was concerned, as opposed to the merit. Chorus is ours, and his friend from Kericho is the one who was driving the agenda from Senate. He knows that because that is his student. But this is one of those places where the student didn't follow the teacher.
I will defend Senator Aaron. In fact, he was the only person who, in his first press conference, questioned the procedure that the cabinet secretary followed. But later, when people went to the extent of we want to remove the cabinet secretary and so forth, he was the person actually who stepped back and said that's not the right thing to do, to the extent that he was being accused that he was compromised. Because when he raised the issue initially, he never contemplated that some characters, for purpose of, you know, there are so many new people also in town, just want to make a name. For purpose of making a name and looking like they're doing something, they would go to that extent of wanting to remove the cabinet secretary. But we are very lucky, Debarl. If the Chiloba was from another tribe, and Chebukati is a different tribe, this discussion
would be taking another angle altogether.
Would have never have been a question of CEO versus the chair. Quickly, you would have seen politicians divide themselves. But because they come from one place, it became easy to. It has become easy to make a more issues-based discussion.
Let me just weigh in on this. First, then, if that was to be so, you'd be hearing Senator Khalwale defending Chiloba, and he's not. And there are many people, many times, who take positions that are independent.
Yes.
But I thought that as we were discussing this, we would not be worrying about who moved the motion. I think we'd be worrying about how the petition was removed from the table. the petition against the CS. Yes. It still took tribal intervention for it to be removed. And for me, that should be the worry. When it came to Parliament, I'm aware of the colleagues who are pushing for it. They asked me to sign the petition. I refused. I said, I have no basis for signing this petition. I also have no basis for defending the CEO because I'm neutral. But if it comes to the floor and there are issues, then I'll speak to it. But it never did because it was killed using those same avenues.
Small correction point by my brother Kipchumba, that the reason why the Luhya leaders were acquired on this issue of Chebukati vis-a-vis Chiloba is because both are Luhyas. You are wrong. You remember we were in the streets, first with the tear gas and live bullets, fighting to remove Chiloba at a time when his chairman was not a Luhya. In fact, it was, Hassan. He's a Hassan. So it's not a question of tribe for some of us. But it will take a bit of time for people now to make us earn our respect in history. That time is coming sooner or later.
It's your turn to eat.